Are you minding your mental when life gets loud and nothing seems as simple? Make sure you're minding your mental. Focus on where you're headed, not just what you've been through. Nobody knows you like you do, and God will help to see you through. Be the first one to give yourself a helping hand. Just take a chance by minding your mental. Get behind that wheel and take control. You only have one life, don't let it pass you by. It's really that simple. Let's start by minding the mental.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Mind the Mental Monday. I am your host, Reverend Benita Weathers. It is good to be in the place one more time for yet another Monday that we are minding our mental. And as I say all the time, I hope that we are minding our mental every single day, not just on Mondays, but Mondays is a day that I have selected as the day to come to you once a week just to give a little reminder of the many ways that it's important for us to mind our mental and the many, if you notice, we have a lot of different and varying topics, but minding our mental is important in every single aspect of our lives. And so that's why we have a wide range of topics, and that's why we speak about minding our mental throughout all of life's lifings, whether it is around family issues or finances or um, career or just, just a wide range of things. And so I hope that you find these topics that we talk about to be helpful and important, always trying to impart some kind of wisdom around the different ways that we need to mind our mental and the different aspects of our lives that really have a huge impact on our mental health. I am a mental health advocate. I am not a licensed mental health therapist. So, whatever is said on this podcast, this is not meant to be a private therapy session. If you, I say all the time, if you need therapy, there are licensed and trained therapists out there that there are resources I can direct you to get those kinds of services. I am a licensed coach, but or certified coach, I should say, a life coach, and so help. I can ride shotgun and help you navigate different waters as you are traversing life. And but even in that, if things come up where it sounds like you really need a therapist to help you through it, I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm going to let you know what my limitations are. All right. So just want to say all that up front. Well, tonight I want to, as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us tonight on Mind the Mental Monday. Tonight's topic is called In Pursuit of Legacy. And you will figure out what I mean by that. So, the way this topic came up tonight was I was having a conversation with a young person, in their 20s who will be heading to college and is going to, the college of their parent and is going to participate in the same sport that their parent not only participated in, but that their parent still holds the record um, for a certain a certain part, a certain sport, or a certain thing that they did within the sport. So, as you can imagine, that is a lot, can be a lot of pressure, right? To walk in sort of the footsteps of your parent. And I think that if you come, in particular, if you come from parents who have a lot of accomplishments and, who are well known or who have, uh, accomplished a lot of things in the different areas of their life, a person could put a lot of pressure on themselves to try to do at least as well as their parent, right? If not better. And they can put a lot of pressure on themselves. And so I thought about this topic. So many, many, many years ago, I developed a mental health program that would be given in schools. I did a version for schools and a version for churches, but the version for school, originally my idea was to do this program with college students. And so I did some focus groups at the university where I work. And these students it's an Ivy League school. And so these are students who have a lot of pressure, either because they might be the first in their family to go to college. They might be the first in their family to go to an Ivy League. They might come from a family who are long-standing family members who went to Ivy League institutions and just have this pressure to, do really well. And at the time that I developed the program, there were actually quite a few suicides happening at the institution. And I wanted to try to do something to address it. And so I came up with the program to do that. But a lot of those students really do have a lot of pressure on them, sometimes from their families. Sometimes it's self-imposed pressure that they put on themselves to try to do what their families want them to do or try to become what their family want what their parents or their family intends for them to become. It can be a lot of pressure to a point where if they don't feel like they're meeting the mark, they can decide that it's best to just leave this life. And so I really want to encourage somebody, and somebody might think that this message tonight is more for maybe like the teens or the 20 somethings, but I think this is a message for everybody because on the one end, even even people like me in their 50s, who, while my parents, um, they weren't like famous or anything like that, but like they did well. Like my dad, got his doctorate degree in his 60s. And he was really well known, at least around the area where in the city where I grew up. And because people knew who we were, his children, we couldn't go anywhere and people not know who we were or not know who our dad was. And sometimes that could feel like a lot of pressure. Being in ministry, like all of my siblings, except for my sister, all of us are ministers. And we could be sort of thinking about our dad and how what we do impacts his legacy, right? But I think it's important for us to understand that we are all placed here with our own purpose and our own legacy to leave. And what I said to this young person that I was speaking with is, listen, while you might be following in your parents' footsteps, even as you're following in their footsteps, you are still creating footsteps of your own. And understand that your parents' purpose at the time that they were in college was their purpose. What they accomplished when they were in college is what they accomplished. But now it's time for you to live in your purpose. and pay more attention to the footsteps that you're creating as opposed to the that you're trying to follow. Because just like your parent is one of one, so are you. And you have your own gifts and talent and legacy to leave at the institution, even if it's not in the same aspect or the same sport or whatever the case might be. Your legacy might be different than your parents, but it is still your legacy. It is still, God, our creator, made each of us different and on purpose and put in us our own unique purpose. So, I think that it's great, with my children. I love that they have a desire to do well. They have a desire to please us as my husband and I as their parents. But what I've always raised them to do is to be themselves, to be unapologetically, authentically themselves. And that means that they're not going to be like me, right? They're not going to be like their dad. They have their own unique giftings to bring. And I even loathe the term mini me. Many times I've had people to say that, what one of the kids is like my mini me. Like, that's your mini me. No, they're not my mini me. I don't want them to be miniature versions of me. I want them to be who they were uniquely created to be. And I want them to be unapologetic about it. Now, of course, I want them to do well. Like, I don't, I want them to make good choices, but they're going to make some bad choices, just like I did. Right. And so I think on either end of the spectrum, whether you are the parent that you are guiding your child, you want them to be who they were made to be. And on the other end, if you're like the child who is trying to follow in the footsteps, and it might not even be a parent necessarily that you're following in the footsteps of, but it might be, a mentor. It could be another family member, that you're, you feel like you're trying to do something similar to what they did, but you're going to do it in your own unique way. And I want us to embrace that. I want us to embrace who we were created to be, and be okay with who we were created to be and what we were created to bring to the table, and what we were created to establish. And I want, people to understand and really try to tune into their own unique abilities, their own unique ways about themselves and how they do things and how they carry things out. Just because, they don't do it the way that you might doesn't make it wrong. It makes it their own unique way. So let's kind of dive into this topic tonight, because what is important for all of us to really understand is that we were never created to be a carbon copy of somebody else. We were never created to be a copy, right? We were called to be, in some cases, we're called to be a continuation. And in that continuation, it's like we are, the story continues, right? That's what legacy is about. Legacy is where somebody passes something on to the next generation, not for them to copy, but for them to utilize as a roadmap, to help them in their journey. But they're going to take it and they're going to do with it what is meaningful for themselves and for their generation. So when we're trying so hard, sometimes we try so hard to be somebody else, and it's always going to be hard to do that. And in fact, it's going to be impossible to do that because you're not that other person. And so rather than chasing what somebody else is doing and how they're doing it and wanting to somehow do that on your own. No, you have to bring your own uniqueness to any aspect of your life. And so as you're pursuing legacy, whether it is that you are wanting to um, ensure a good continuation of your family's legacy, or whether it is that you have a generation behind you that is looking to you and trying to follow in your legacy. Understand that as you stand in that, and as you are proud of the legacy that you represent, you have to represent it in your own unique way. And I want to encourage you to encourage that next generation to do the same thing, to yes, uphold the family name and all the wonderful things that perhaps your family did, um, or that you are establishing. Sometimes maybe you didn't come from a family that was, did a lot of wonderful things, but you have decided to change that, and you starting with your generation and moving to your children and on, you want to do something new, and you want to create something that will leave a lasting and wonderful legacy to those who are coming up behind you. Whatever the case might be, understand your uniqueness in the process, and then instill in those coming behind you. Now, listen, you have greatness within you already. You already have greatness inside your DNA, as Kendrick would say, right? And so um recognize the greatness that's in your DNA, but also recognize that there might be areas in your DNA that need to be upgraded or need to be changed or need to meet to change in order to meet the mark of the current generation that you're serving. So there's so much to think about when we're talking about legacy. So in terms of minding the mental around this topic of being in pursuit of legacy, it really is just the pressure that we tend to put on ourselves sometimes to be great or to do something great or to make somebody else proud, when the important thing is, are you proud of yourself? Regardless of how anybody else thinks about you or feels about you, how do you feel about you? That is something else, that I like, that I my husband and I try to instill in our children. Like, are you, it's important. I'm glad that you want to make us happy and you want to do what you think that we want you to do. But if you're not happy, if you're not thriving, that's not making us happy. That's not going to make us happy. Um, and so, sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to try to live up to somebody else's standard. And we have to learn to create standards for ourselves, that we can live up to, so that we're not, asking ourselves questions like, can I live up to that? Can I live up to what my parent did, or my grandparents? Um, what if I disappoint people? What if I'm not as successful? What if my path looks completely different than what my parents expected it to look like? This is something that I can really relate to, because, like, from the age of 6 years old, I had said to my family that I'm going to be a pediatrician. That was my dream from the age of 6. I worked summers in my pediatrician's office when I became a teenager. I majored in biology pre-med in college. Um, and then somewhere around my junior year of college, I thought, I don't really want to do that anymore. But I kept pursuing it for a minute, because I was like, well, now at this point, I've told everybody ad nauseum that I wanted to be a pediatrician, and I've put forth all of this effort and this work toward that goal. And now, if I quit on that, if I decide I really don't want to go to medical school, well, what are they going to think about me? My immediate thought was that my parents are going to be so disappointed. Not only my parents, but my siblings even. Like I thought, oh, they're going to be so disappointed in me because they're expecting me to be the doctor in the family, because sometimes you have that kind of pressure in families, right? Where it's like you're expected to be whatever, right? Now, my family is not like that at all. They really my parents didn't necessarily have any expectation. They only wanted me to pursue my dreams. If they wanted me to be a pediatrician, it would be because they knew that was my passion. That's what I wanted to be, and they were supportive of me in that, as well as my siblings, of course, right? They were supportive. So in my head, I'm like, but I've been saying this all this time. What if and so now that that's not the area, the way I don't want to pursue that anymore, what are they going to think of me? They're going to think that I failed, or, they're going to think, I don't know. I just had so many thoughts was going through my head around that time. But I realized that, I have to live this life for me. I can't live this life for everybody else, right? And what everybody else expects. I've got to live a life that is going to make me thrive and make me happy. So, and so I finally decided to let my parents know, right? That, hey guys, of course I didn't say that to my parents, but yeah, like, hey, I don't want to do this medicine thing anymore. I don't want to go to medical school. I don't quite know what I want to do, but I know I don't want to go to medical school anymore. And their response was, okay, well, you'll figure out what you want to do. It was like, it just wasn't a big deal at all. The whole big deal that I had in my head was not a big deal to them at all. Because as long as it's whatever I do is legal, and you know what I mean, and it makes me happy, and I'm thriving as a result. That's all any parent really wants of their children. Well, I'm not can't speak for any parent because there are parents that really do push their kids. Like, we are all doctors in this family, so that's what you're going to be too. And you have a whole lot of doctors out here who are doctors because they were pushed into that, not because they love being doctors. And that's the doctor that you don't want. That's because, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, so I just think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves sometimes we have it made up in our minds what other people who are important to us will think of us if we make a decision that will be a good decision for us, but we think that it'll be something that they might be disappointed about. And we have to get ourselves to a place where I don't care who it is, whether it's your parents or whoever it is, you have to be willing to say, listen, I can't live this life for you. And that's something that, we tell our kids all the time. Like, listen, you got to live for you. Our kids at this point are adults. I stay out grown folk business. And it's like you have in you got in you what you need to be successful at whatever it is that you want to do and pursue in this life. Ultimately, this life is yours, and you have to live it for you. And you can't live for other people. You have to, you just can. You've got one life to live. Now, I'm not saying that you don't, help other people in this life, but in terms of like career and purpose and different things that you might do in legacy, that's really a sort of a single thing that you have to make a decision about for yourself. So I hope that what I'm saying, tonight is making is making some sense. And so rather than compare yourself to the legacy that you're trying to fulfill, um, sometimes we like to compare ourselves and say, I want to be just like this person. I want to do this exactly the same way that that person did. I want to achieve what they achieved. I want to get the award. I want to do, the same kind of thing. But as a legacy, rather than again trying to make their footprints yours, why not learn from their journey? Why not just sit down with them and learn all the things that they may have done to get to where they are, but also they can share what their mistakes were along the way. And you can learn something, from other people's journey. You can also honor them, but in honoring them, you honor them as you. You don't honor them by trying to be them. You honor them by extending their legacy through you and your contribution to it. Um, you can build on what they started rather than reaching the milestone that they reached. Take that and build on that. That's what legacy does. That's what happens when we're able to build something that we hope that future generations will benefit from. Sometimes people get upset, like, there are people who maybe started a business and they've had a flourishing, successful business, and they raise their children and they already have fixed in their minds that, oh, this is a business I'm going to pass down to my children. Well, but if that's not your children's, that was your dream. If that's not your children's dream, don't get disappointed when they decide that they want to do something else, right? That it doesn't change your legacy. What you can do is you can utilize what you have built. They can utilize what you've built even, as a stepping stone to what their goals and dreams are. But I just think that we shouldn't put pressure on ourselves to live up to somebody else's legacy, and we should not put pressure on the generation behind us to live up to our legacy. Every generation has their own giftings, their own offerings for their time. My sister says this all the time. We have these discussions about the differences in the different generations. And all of my siblings are baby boomers. I'm the lone Gen X in my group, in my sibling group. And even though we like are come from the same parents and all that sort of thing, raised in the same household, like my way of thinking, I think, is different. It is really, I I feel like, it's just different because even though we're raised in the same household, we really are the way that our generations sort of think about life is really different. And I see it the same thing in my own kids. Like my millennial daughter, um, and my Gen Z daughter, not discounting my son, who's I think really on the cusp. I think he's Gen Z, but I think he's close to millennial too, right? He's kind of in, even though he's the middle, he's kind of in between those two generations. But they have just their outlook on life is different. Not only because they're just different human beings, of course, but just the generations just have a different outlook because the times are different, right? That they're coming up in. And so, the things that, we might put on ourselves to try to be the same as the generations ahead of us, we're just not gonna do or be because we just have a different way of thinking. We grew up amid different circumstances in life, that sort of makes us really, really different. So, but we can still carry those values, that the legacy ahead of us and that we're creating. We can still carry the values, even though we might carry them in different ways. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Say it makes sense. Say you're making sense. Put it in the comments. You're making sense. Um, if you think I'm making sense. If you don't think I'm making sense, just keep your comment to yourself. No. No, let me know that too, because that way I can grow, right? That as long as it's constructive criticism, I can take that. Don't criticize just to be mean. All right. Let it make it be constructive. All right. So sometimes these expectations that either we get externally from someone else or that we place on ourselves are what can really make our mental state not be where it could be, right? Because we are so preoccupied with how am I going to make this person or these people proud of me. But you really have to think about what will make yourself proud of you. And if you can make your own self proud, if you can be proud of you, it kind of doesn't matter what other people think. What they think about you. That doesn't matter. And they'll come along or they won't. And that's on them. Like that has nothing to do with you at all. Okay? So understand that. Um so I really this is not going to be a long Mind the Mental Monday tonight, but I really wanted to just have us to think about our own legacies. What is it that you value, that you think is a value that you think that you can leave for the next generation or even the current generation? What is something that you feel like um, you can do that will make this world a better place? And that's really what it's about. It's about, contributing something positive in this earth, not trying to necessarily be like somebody else who has done it because they did it in the way that they did it. And now you're doing it in the way that you're doing it. And the people that those people might be able to reach might not you might they might not be able to reach the people that you're able to reach, right? And so I just think it's important that as we some of us may be in pursuit of legacy, as we're thinking about what legacies like our parents may have left, as we're thinking about what we want to leave as a legacy whenever we depart this world, that we don't put so much pressure on ourselves that we end up losing ourselves in the process. I want us to, think hard about what can we deposit in the earth? What seed can we deposit in the earth that is going to produce some fruit for the next generation to feed from? And so I think that, as we are um, working on our own lives and as we, whatever it is that we might be in pursuit of, I want to encourage you to keep going, right? Keep planting, keep watering, um, keep um, feeding, adding some food to the soil. I want you to just to keep to keep thinking about how you can be the best version of you for your legacy. And while giving your legacy, whether it's children or somebody you're mentoring or whatever the case might be, giving them permission to be proud of the legacy that is in them to leave. Their seed might be different than yours. And that's okay, because that's exactly what it's supposed to be. And remember, even if you're following in somebody's footsteps, at the same time, you're creating footsteps of your own. All right. So as you're pursuing legacy, do it as only you can, by being authentically, unapologetically you. All right, so that's it for Mind the Mental Monday tonight. I know it was a little shorter than usual, which is fine with me because every time I try to make it short, it doesn't come out that way. And I'm gonna be real honest tonight. I'm actually exhausted tonight. I'm really a little exhausted. And so, but I hope that that helps somebody, to understand that, somebody who is putting a lot of pressure on themselves, to as they're walking in their sort of their parents' legacy or somebody else's legacy, that you recognize that your legacy is going to be yours. You can build on the legacy your parents have left, but you're going to build on it in a way that's uniquely yours. Okay. And it is going to benefit the next generation who is going to build on what you put there in their own way. And it's going to keep going like that. All right. All right. So I hope that everybody has a wonderful and blessed week. I'm going to try to get some rest this week at some point. And Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I will see you next Monday on Mind the Mental Monday.
Are you minding your mental when life gets loud and nothing seems as simple? Make sure you're minding your mental. Focus on where you're headed, not just what you've been through. Nobody knows you like you do, and God will help